financial crisis recovery.
Foreclosure, short sales, bankruptcy, credit card debt, job loss, depreciating home values, money management. Peace of mind when it comes to your finances seems completely out of reach under current conditions, but there is a way to achieve it. For the next 60 minutes, you're going to find out how to cover your assets. Cover your assets.
Through the third-party agents we use, because when we collect payments like a mortgage company, we report them to credit bureaus. That in of itself, because of the weight that a mortgage or a installment carries in the spectrum of the profile that drives that score, is absolutely huge. So,
Financial Crisis Bible, Todd's website, one of his websites, financialcrisisbible.com. This is a free download for people who are already facing a financial crisis or could be in the near future. Or lastly, people that just want to ensure that they're never in that position. If you or anyone you know could benefit from this information, check out Todd's website, financialcrisisbible.com. Again, that's financialcrisisbible.com, and we'll be right back.
And welcome back to Cover Your Assets here on ESPN 1500. Sitting here with Wade Abed with Pathway Funding, and we've been talking about some different topics this morning. One of the bigger topics we've been talking about is Wade, your mortgage product, your non-mortgage product for those people who have experienced a foreclosure or short sale or possibly bankruptcy recently, and just helping them get back on their feet, being able to build them and get them into a house now, and then getting on that path where they can get a more permanent loan after the seasoning guidelines there. Why don't you talk a little bit more about your product? We were kind of talking off air as to what the down payment requirements are, where that down payment needs to come from, and things like that. Why don't you expand a little bit more on those things?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mike, and I'm glad you gave me the opportunity. The homes that we build, we have a variety of home styles, looks, floor plans, just like you would expect any semi-custom home builder like Regal Homes to build. The qualification parts, and I think that's the most important, as we look again like you as a person today, not just the credit score, but we do the due diligence that we are required to do statutorily, from just a responsible position to determine what it is you can afford to build. We determine what kind of lot you can afford, what kind of house and finishes. But more importantly, before we even get to that point, what we look at is what event happened to you. Okay, we go through that with you. We look at your income. We look at the situation. We look back at the credit. If you had great credit for 10, 12, 18 years and now there's this 2-year just gray spot, we get it. It was a single event. We needed to come back. That in of itself is then graded against a matrix. Our matrix, to Mike's point, is we want to make sure when we're done with our contract, which we'll write a contract for 3 years, 2 years, 4 years sometimes, that when you're done with it, you've made it through the Pathway Funding program, soft landing, we get you back into the conventional markets, not because we're a hugely high rate, but because you can enjoy the lowest rates out there that the market can offer, and you're qualified to do so on a 30-year plan, which brings your payment down. Now, our programs are on 30-year amortizations. We require a minimum of 5% down plus the fees that go, with the program, to 10 to 15 to 20 or anything you want to put in there after. One of the big things, is funds. There was a caller on the show before. How much can I give my daughter to be able to get her a house? When it comes to the down payment, if you've just gone through bankruptcy or if you've just gone through a divorce, maybe you don't have all that cash. Maybe you don't have that 10% yet. But maybe someone in your family does. We're not concerned about that guideline necessarily, and by the time you're done with the program, it's irrelevant because you're really doing a rate and term refinance. So in the non-mortgage world, we don't have that same restrictive box that exists today with the banks, with the mortgage companies, whether they're private or public. We have our own guidelines, but we do follow the same methodologies from a consumer's point of view, or from the consumer point of view, that we want to make sure it's responsible lending, it is appropriate lending, it's the right thing for you as the individual, and it's fairly similar to the process you would go through with a lender. In fact, I would probably say that the process, the due diligence of our process is probably just a little bit greater on that side, because we have to look beyond, because our box is not square necessarily, and so we look at a lot of factors that somebody wouldn't, that's just going into the arena of Fannie Freddie. But at the end of the day, it's a very simple program. You have reserves, we keep them with our banking partners. There's always the down payment applied toward the principal. Your payments are coming off, principal is being reduced, coming off of the loan amount, so when you refinance, you have less. You have your credit being reported to bureaus, which in conjunction with the third-party credit repair corporation of your choosing, as long as they're accredited and licensed, they're walking you through that way, and we're helping you do that by doing the reporting. And at the end of the day, you have a wonderful new home. Thing about that, in the market space that's out there today, if you have 4 properties on the street, 2 of them maybe were short sales, 1 is just a normal house and it's in fine shape, and then you have this brand new one, and they're all priced in the same market space. Which one are you going to pick? You're going to pick the new one. And the reason we do it that way is it's another way to make sure when it comes time for Mike to come in and refinance that house for you, the value's going to be there. There's no guarantee, but we can do our best to make sure that happens. And so, in a nutshell, that's kind of the process. Again, it's 5, 10, 15, 20% down. I'm going to give you a little heads up.
Okay.
We have a campaign kicking off. You'll see it in the Star Tribune. You'll see it on the web portion of the Star Trib. You're going to see it in some email website campaigns. We're going to be announcing a program that's going to require reserves. It's going to still have the fees and what's entailed in going through the program, but we're going to offer, for the right circumstance, actually a zero down program.
Wow.
But reserves are required.
But reserves required.
Right.
So zero down, reserves required. I mean, in those reserves you mentioned before, it's with a banking partner with you guys. So those reserves kind of act, as a safety net there. So if something does happen on that loan, or if there's a situation that arises,
right.
Those assets, can be tapped into. It's almost kind of like a mortgage insurance policy almost.
Really, it is, because it's their money.
Yeah.
And it's their account. The thing that we want to make sure is that there is a comfort level, that you're going to be okay, that you have enough money in this that it makes sense. You have something happen, you are going to be okay. And we can put as many safety stops as possible in there. One of the things, it's funny when we're working with our investors or our banks and we show them models, and please, with all due respect, take this the right way. If we look at a Fannie model, a Freddie model, an FHA model, and we say, well, your risk exposure is 95% because you put 5% down. Your risk exposure on a Freddie is 5%. Your risk at FHA is 96.5. There's only a very small margin. At the end of the day, because we control most of the costs on everything, our risk exposures are much less, and there's enough room inside of them to make adjustments as necessary. And I'll give you, for instance, let's say we built a beautiful new home for you. It was in the affordability box of you and your family. At the end of the day, we get an appraisal, because we have our appraisals are independent. We don't do them because we want them to be exactly what they are built to be. What if it comes in a little less? What happens in your world? You have a problem.
Right.
In our case, we realize that could happen. In the private side, we can take that and say, you know what? Let's knock our principal down just a little bit, and let's get them refinanced. There's a lot more things that we can do within the statutory boundary of lending to get you ready for Mike or any conventional world. Yep. So it's really kind of a neat deal. So the program and the campaign will start fairly soon. You'll want to look for it in the Star Trib. You'll want to look for it on the web. If you read your news on the website for the Star Tribune, you'll probably see a few other medias used as radio is today. But I think it's an exciting time, and people need to call. People need to go check it out, because I know sometimes things sound too good to be true, but this one's been very well thought out by our funding group, our hedge fund, and we put a lot of time into it. And, you know, right now we're building homes for people,
Right.
and all over the Twin Cities, and it's a really neat thing to get a call or an email. I have one customer in particular I think of often. We have such a relationship at this point because this is real personal, and that's why I say I know there's emotion involved in almost all of this stuff. Get on the phone. But this person, I have a relationship at this point, you know, from a professional standpoint, and it's just neat to see that there's hope. And so you have to make the call. You have to seek the advice. And Todd can do a great job of it and direct you toward Pathway or Waterstone for Mike or whatever's appropriate.
Yep. And the nice thing with Todd, you know, there's a plan put in place when you go meet with him, and you guys are part of the plan. Someone like us is part of the plan, but none of this happens really unless someone comes to Todd and gives him their situation. He looks at it and says, you know what? Here's your plan. We got this stuff set in place. You fit there. This is what we need to do for you. And that's the nice thing about it, is that these people, you know, they don't go to Todd and he fixed just one aspect of it, and then you got to go somewhere else, you know, to do the next thing. We got the plan in place basically from start to finish, and that's where you guys come in. You're kind of that middle road, the middle step there, the second step,
Yep.
to get these people back, you know, back on their feet, back into a house that they like, that they can afford. And then you take the final step, you know, with someone like myself or someone else, just putting that final third-year fixed mortgage on them after the credit things have been addressed.
Mike, you hit it right on the nail, right on the head of the nail. I think that you know, you look Todd like he's the cog, and we're the spokes. Right. And all of us work together, and he's very picky about his spokes.
Right. Yeah, so Todd's very good. So if you want to get a hold of Todd, you can go to his website, coveryourassets21.com, or you can contact him by phone. His phone number is 763-559-3800. Wade, good to see you. Good to have you on the show.
Great to be with you, Mike, and listeners.